With me right now, I got another guy that probably was up a long time last night. He's our good friend over in Ottawa, Illinois. He's at WCMY. He covers a bazillion football and other sporting events over there in Ottawa. Sean Frey, how you doing, Sean?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on today.
Hey, weren't you at the Kankakee Ottawa game last night? And Kankakee must have had a good night, huh?
Oh, it was a difficult night if you were an Ottawa Pirate fan, that's for sure. Kankakee ran out a young man by the name of DeAndre Caldwell, and he ran to the tune of about 250 yards plus all over the Ottawa defense. So, it was one of those nights for Ottawa, but they'll try to regroup, and they have Geneseo next week. So they're going to have to figure a few things out and do it rapidly.
You know, the NIB 12, which is really 10, it's kind of like the Big 10's not really 10, but the NIB 12, and they had to make some scrambling around after they lost two teams and did some of their schedules, and Kankakee was probably the one that Ottawa had to add to their schedule, wasn't it?
I'm not really sure, to be honest with you. I came here, in fact, the spring after those teams had decided to move, and I feel like Kankakee might have been on the schedule the year before, but I'm not sure about that.
I know DeKalb, they really upped their schedule this year. They played Lake Park last night, which I think is an 8A team. They lost by a touchdown, but they're a really good team. And how has it been to cover the NIB 12? I've been around some of those schools, but I mean, that's some pretty solid football over there.
Well, the thing about the Big 12 is that if you're not big up front, it's hard to win football games. When they had the realignment, Rochelle, who's had a pretty proud football program for a number of years, moved over to the west side, and they were expected to have some success over there, and they really haven't been able to find it. It's one of those leagues where if you can't pound it up the middle and establish the run, you're going to have a hard time really doing much of anything. And it's such a competitive league. And even looking at the west side, you have Geneseo and Sterling, and always good at football. LaSalle Peru's had some struggles. They're trending upward. Rochelle, after a few struggles, is trending upward. And Ottawa's trying to figure a few things out. And then on the east side, if you're a team on the West Division and your crossovers are never going to be much of a treat. DeKalb, again, they had a great performance last night. Caneland, very, very good. Sycamore is trying to, I'm not sure if they won last night or not. They were playing a team out of Indiana, but they lost their first two games, and that's unusual for them. So it's a brutal league. You always see a lot of really big boys, and it's always a very high quality of football. So I enjoy covering the Big 12, but sometimes you have nights like I had last night.
And, it's one of those things, when they did lose those two teams, they went to 2 5-team divisions, but they still only get one qualifier, automatic qualifier for the state. And I know they really would like to either add some teams or do something. And, the kind of the rumor talks around here, Sean, is a lot of us would like to see Sycamore and DeKalb join the Nick 10. I don't think it's going to happen because they got it made now. They play everybody one time and the schedule's done. But I know that is one concern of those schools. They'd like to kind of add a couple of teams or do something a little different.
Right. And, if you're DeKalb and Sycamore, you said it, there's not really much of a reason to move away right now. They both have opportunities to go and get non-conference outside of their schedule, which is already pretty high quality. And, in the case of DeKalb and Sycamore, there's not a great deal of travel, inside of the division. So I think it's a pretty good place for them right now. And DeKalb is, if last night's any indication, obviously proved that they can play with the big boys. Despite having, maybe some smaller schools, relatively speaking, in the conference they're in now.
WCMY is Sean Frey, and, we kind of talked, but we first started meeting when we talked about the Northeastern Athletic Conference. Of course, Ottawa Marquette's in that. Christian Life for our area in South Beloit. But a big story kind of popped that I was not aware of, and I follow Christian Life pretty close, is that all their games this year are going to be 8-on-8, which automatically is a forfeit for them. Even if they play a game and there's a score comes up, it goes to a forfeit. The team from the other side wins it because they could have 11 people. And I talked to Matt Troha yesterday. He says, well, they voided an 11-man contract, and that's the reason. Plus, there's no 8-man football in Wisconsin. Have you heard any remarks from the Marquette people about all this?
I haven't heard much about it, at least from the Marquette faithful. I think they're excited for an opportunity to go and play Erie Prophetstown instead now. I think there's some disappointment because the last handful of years, Rocker Christian Life has been a solid football team with Tony Ambrosio at head coach, and they had his son Adam playing quarterback. linebacker. And I saw 2 years ago, it was 2014, the season opener, Marquette and Christian Life, and the Eagles, I think it was 47-20 or something like that. It was a really solid performance by WROK Christian Life, and that's the kind of game that Marquette needs as one of the better teams in Class 1A or sometimes 2A, depending on their enrollment. And to not have that caliber of team in the conference now because of the low numbers they've had isn't really a great situation. But with the opportunity to go play Erie Prophetstown, they have about 3 times the enrollment of Marquette. I think there's some excitement to be able to take a game off the schedule that otherwise would have been essentially an idle week and replace it with a game that hopefully will be a challenge for the Crew.
You got to give the Marquette people a thumbs up because they could have taken the easy way out and kind of had a week off and picked up a forfeit win, but they'd rather play and get ready for the playoffs. So that tells me that they're pretty serious about the rest of this season.
Well, they're state ranked right now. Last time I saw, they were at number 2, and they just hammered Chicago Luther North last night. That was a team that was expected to be in the upper half of the conference this year. And the Crusaders are loaded for bear. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And with head coach Tom Yuff, since he's come in, he's really turned things around. They're very fundamentally sound. They focus on playing football the right way. And if they have an opportunity to go out there and challenge themselves, they go and do that. And I think that's part of the reason why Marquette has had the amount of success that they've had over the past several years.
You talk about Luther North. I verified with them yesterday. They are leaving the Northeastern Athletic Conference to join the Chicago Prep Conference. And that's one problem the Northeastern Athletic Conference has faced in turnovers is schools leaving, and maybe they couldn't handle football or something like that. Do you think Ottawa Marquette, who came into the Northeastern Athletic Conference to kind of get their football program going together again, do you think that's going to be some concerns for them too? I know it is for the conference whenever they see movement like that.
Well, I don't know if it's a concern for them, but I know that it's a concern for me. I don't think it's any secret that the bottom half of the Northeastern Athletic Conference has had some struggles, and as you mentioned, the turnover is a pretty significant issue. I think for the Northeastern Athletic Conference going forward, I think they need to find some stability with the teams that they bring in.
Yep.
If they're able to do that, it has the chance to be a healthy conference, but River Valley is a team that just had its program revived after it looked like it was on its death now. A number of teams with poor numbers this year, not just WROK Christian Life, across the board. I don't know that does a team like Marquette or like a Chicago Hope Academy, or as in the case of a few years ago, WROK Christian Life, any favors when you're just not able to field competitive football at the bottom half of the conference. So, and I'm sure that Marquette's keeping a close eye on it. I mean, moving into this conference has provided enough challenges that it's been a great fit for them, and I think they'd like to stay. But the way things have been going here the last 2 years, you have to wonder if maybe they have an eye out somewhere else.
You're kind of like me. I moved here to the Illinois area because my wife's from this area about 12 years ago, and you just moved into the Ottawa area. Am I right? You're from like the East Coast area, so you're seeing some Illinois football that you hadn't seen in the past, much like I did when I moved from Ohio to Illinois.
Right. I grew up about an hour, 15 minutes outside of Philadelphia in Pennsylvania, and that was where most of my life had been to that point. And I went to Minnesota to cover some high school sports up there for a little bit, and then came here to Ottawa. So I've been well-traveled in the Midwest over the last 5 years or so. And, you see different types of football, and, the interesting thing for me was seeing the way sports are played in Minnesota and then seeing the subtle differences here in Illinois. You'd think they'd be playing some semblance of the same game, but they're really not. I thought it was really interesting how there are different touches and different aspects and styles of play just in different regions of the country.
And the atmosphere is a little bit different. And, you get used, when I was in Ohio, I was in a small community. You get used to a certain kind of an atmosphere at a game. And being near suburb schools or even big city schools like Rockford, sometimes it's a cultural shock. Have you enjoyed that part of it, though, being in Ottawa? Because I know Ottawa's a good football town.
Well, I'll tell you what, the football games are a lot warmer here than they are in Minnesota.
I bet they are.
The atmosphere has been great. I covered a small school with an enrollment of about 300 up in Minnesota, and they had some great crowds on Friday nights. But you get there at King Field at Ottawa High School for a kickoff, or even at Gould Stadium. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to see it or not, but Marquette High School fans travel like you wouldn't believe. And I mean, it's always just, it's packed. There's a buzz in the crowd. There's a lot of electricity. It's a great experience being able to cover high school sports in the city of Ottawa, and I've really enjoyed it.
So it's a good fit for you, isn't it, Sean?
I hope so. It seems to be so far, and I've had some quality sports teams across the board to cover here over the last several years, so I'm hoping that keeps up. I would like to see Marquette really push forward here and make a nice run into the playoffs, and hopefully we can see the Ottawa Pirates get it turned around in the football field here soon.
Well, Sean, I know you're like me. It seems like Friday goes right into Saturday pretty quick. I appreciate you taking time today, and we'll keep in contact because I enjoyed this relationship that we've formed since, the first of the football season.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and I appreciate you having me on here this morning.
Thanks a lot. We've been talking with WCMY's from Ottawa, Illinois, Sean Frey, some insight about Ottawa Marquette and the Northeastern Athletic Conference, also the NIB 12, which includes our neighbors Sycamore and DeKalb, and always love talking to somebody that moved into the region like I did and like to compare some of the things that are going on. And thanks for Sean coming on, because you know what? A lot of us, I didn't get to bed till like 12:30, and that's way past my bedtime. So 5 o'clock came pretty early today. But if you don't like high school football, you don't need to be in radio. Hey, we're going to take a time out. We're going to be back with our friend from the IHSA. We haven't had him for a while. Matt Troha is going to be our guest in just a moment as you're listening to the Stateline Sports Hour here on News Talk 1440 WROK.